Hey everybody, welcome to the Forbes Newsroom. I'm Steve Bertoni. I'm joined by my great colleague, Diane Brady. Diane, welcome to the Newsroom. Welcome back.
Great to be here, Steve.
Excited to have you on to talk about the latest list you're working on.
The CEO Next. And I have to say, first of all, it was started by Steve Bertoni. So this is our second annual list. And what I love about this list, it's not CEOs right now, it's the next generation coming into the C-suite. And I think what's powerful about that is these are the people that are going to be running some of the largest companies in the U.S. So we're not just focused on great CEOs. It's that these are the power brokers, the people with scale, the people who frankly have the resources to change the world.
Yes, and these are not the kind of heir apparents for their current company. They might be, but again, you're looking at folks that are going to be running a company someday, whether it's the one they're at now or maybe one in the future, correct?
Yeah, and we have it's a mix because there are clear heir apparent roles like a COO, president. We also know that a lot of those, heirs apparent, basically don't end up getting those jobs.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of horse races. What's interesting, I think, trend-wise, is you're seeing a lot more interest in people who have an entrepreneurial background and the nature of all of the threats. Like, to be a CEO these days is different than it was 20 years ago. It was very command and control. You could have a 5-year strategy. Now it's really about being adaptable, resilient, because you look at all of the different things that are coming at you as a company, whether it's the pandemic, climate change, cybersecurity being canceled. I think the level of threats and the lack of predictability sort of brings a different type of genotype into the C-suite.
Yeah, because it used to be just, I want to make money for the company. That was, make money for shareholders, fiduciary duties. But now, as you mentioned, everyone's got to worry about politics and everyone's mental health and geopolitics and pandemics. It's a very, very tricky job.
I think you raise a good point because we hear a lot about stakeholder capitalism and a lot of people go, rhetoric. But in fact, it's true. I think that you look at the talent wars right now, you need a very different way to engage with your employees. And especially during the pandemic, you had all of these CEOs talking about their own mental health issues, instead of keeping the kids out of the room, bringing their kids into the Zoom calls to say, human, I'm with you. And there's so many stakeholders that for sustainable success, you have to be thinking about a lot more people and how you engage with them. And I think that also brings not just a different type of person, but it's creating a different path. So to create this list, we spoke to dozens of executive coaches and recruiters.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, where does this? This is not a list where you're looking at hardcore numbers and figures.
How much money do you make?
Yeah,
Although
exactly. Or
that is always interesting.
Sales. But I'm saying you're looking at, you're talking to the kind of the CEO makers of the world and seeing what's on their radar. Tell me how that works.
So yeah, there's probably 4 different camps we look at. One is the recruiters, and that is there's a whole class of people out there that are CEO recruiters. Their job is to understand talent. They get hired by the boards to go and find me a CEO. Then you've got leadership coaches, and often those are brought in by boards because they have a roster of talent and they want you to say hey, just check out Steve, do a 360, talk to him. Is he the kind of person we want in this role? Obviously the Forbes Newsroom, we talked to people who cover the beats, and then we spoke to people in the industry as who's making buzz, who's one to watch. So between that, I think it gave us a really rich list. We definitely we didn't have any repeats from last year, so a lot of those people are still people to watch, if not more. So I think it's a list of people who are making a difference in their industry and frankly are likely to be shaking up when they do get to those top jobs.
That's so cool. Are you seeing any patterns you mentioned, back there used to be a very, set path with the COO or maybe the president goes on, but are you seeing other roles and other responsibilities that are now in the running or becoming more valued than maybe, a decade ago?
I think you are, but you're not enough. So one of the things that happened during the pandemic was boards got very risk averse, right? Enough's going on, there's COVID. Do we really want to swap out our CEO? And so you get that, a huge percentage, something along the lines of 90% of CEO successions were internal. And a lot of boards felt it was somehow they were a loser if they had to go outside. That is changing now. I think there's an understanding of not just going outside your company, but outside your industry. So taking somebody from retail and bringing them into, say, manufacturing, and really appreciating the skill sets that are really transformative, like tech, getting those folks. So some of the academy companies they called are still the P&Gs and McKinseys, but companies like Adobe, companies like, to have experience at Amazon, Google, the behemoths of tech is hugely important now because we're in a connected world. Every industry is being disrupted. There's digital transformation. You want people that have that skill set and who are comfortable with it.
That can get digitized fast, know the future, know where you're headed.
And CHRO is not a term we talk about.
Yeah.
I think that human resources experience is not the only path, but it's becoming one of those testing grounds where they will put you there for a year or two because they want you to really understand how to engage talent, because that's ultimately, going forward. A lot of companies are almost ecosystems where it's about engaging talent that isn't necessarily loyal only to you. It's a huge factor in success.
It's wild, and being the head of HR these days is not an easy job.
I'm from
for
HR
sure.
and I'm here to help. It's like, am I being fired?
Do you see patterns within different within big industries themselves? Like, would a tech, like a CTO, a chief tech officer, have a better chance at being a tech company? Would a marketing officer have a better chance at a consumer, like a Nike or a Procter & Gamble, that the whole thing is about getting advertising, getting to market versus the kind of the technical wizardry?
I think the roles are changing, and I think that you're seeing a lot more of a strategic approach to all of these C-suite roles. So first of all, certain roles used to be a cost center and other roles were the revenue generators. So if you're the chief revenue officer, you're beloved. If you're the chief, HR officer, you're a cost center. Now you're actually seeing a lot more entrepreneurial energy about creating pockets of revenue growth. So the CFO is a classic. That's a very common way to the C-suite, especially in the financial services. You're seeing them get much more strategic, direct reports. So they're responsible for cybersecurity. In some cases, they're actually responsible for marketing. So when you start to look at who reports up to these roles, you're seeing that they really are viewed as a stepping stone to running the whole company. And the reality with being a CEO is it's very hard to train for that job unless you've had that job. Something about having nobody above you is just, you don't know how people are going to act. So also being a CEO at smaller companies or being a CEO of units, that's why places like Pepsi or P&G were such great academy companies, is everybody essentially had a small Fortune 500 company that they were running. Even though they had the parent company, they had that experience coming in.
It was a company within a company within a company.
And the buck stops with you, and it's a very real experience that takes you. You can get tested, and people know you're going to be successful.